Entitled Way. While my now wife was dating 15 years ago, she took a job at a company and struck up a friendship with one of the executives who was many years older. She told me how much of a nice man he was. I didn't think much of it at the time. Around the time of our wedding 4 years later, he helped her get a part-time job, and I knew she had met him for lunch. At this stage, I still didn't think anything of it. It wasn't until our second child was born some 7 years later, and my parents were visiting from my home country, and we gave them my wife's old mobile phone to use while they were staying with us. I was showing my father how to use the phone when I started to delete some of the text messages to free up some space. It was then I started reading some of the text from this man who she had struck up the friendship with. It was clear from the text that this man was madly in love with my wife, saying things like, "You're the love of my life," and "I love you so much." She never told him she loved him, but would sign off with things like "lots of love" and "hugs," but never made an effort to repel these outbursts of undying love. I confronted her about this, and she broke down, begged me not to leave her, and promised me on our children's life that she would never have any contact with this man again, and it was only ever a friendship, and that it wasn't a PI. I took her word for that. Fast forward 6 years, and we now have 3 children and have moved back to the country of my birth. I was on our family laptop doing some work, and I accidentally click on her work Gmail account instead of my Gmail account to find an unread email sitting right there from the same man. I can't describe how I felt. I nearly vomited into my mouth. It was like flashback. I read through every email, and the theme was the same as before, her confiding how she was feeling. Nothing about our relationship, about things, him persistently declaring his undying love for her and how he had been sad since the day we moved countries. It also showed that the two of them had chatted at least once on the phone, but she had tried to call him at least 3 or 4 times. She initially said she turned to him when she was homesick and feeling down, but I was suspicious as to how he knew that we'd moved countries if this was the first communication since she promised to cut all ties. I confronted her about it and told her I was leaving her. She again broke down and told me he meant nothing more than a good friend, and she was flattered that he felt so strongly about her and how he just listened to her and understood her problems. I asked how he knew we had moved countries, and she come up with some lame reasons. She denied this several times over the course of the next month, but finally admitted that she had been in email contact before we left and had met him for lunch one time before we left. I'm trying really hard to believe her that it was never a PIA and she loves me and our kids more than anything. But something in my gut just can't trust her. There is 2 more. She has never volunteered anything about the E and only told me the truth once I'd already found out more about the extent of the deception. We are now receiving marriage counseling, but I just don't know if I can ever trust her again. I was able to forgive the first EA, but the second I'm not so sure. How can I trust her that she is telling the truth and not holding anything else back? I'm 99% sure it's never progressed to a PIA, but that 1% is eating me from the inside, and I'm sure there is more I haven't been able to find out, and she's not telling me for fear of my walking away. Is there any way back from this, even though we love each other and have 3 children? I feel so hurt and betrayed. Comments. She didn't have a second emotional affair. She had one that lasted 15 years. You would be very foolish to believe that nothing physical happened in 15 years. Can you account for every minute of that time? Of course not. She has shown you that your ultimatums or opinions do not matter to her, so she needs to face some consequences. DNA the kids, as previous posters have said, tell his wife immediately and contact a lawyer. Make sure she knows you have done all this after you have done it, otherwise she will warn the and he will feed his wife some story, but make sure she knows exactly what you have done. Also try and save as many of their messages as you can on the cloud for security. I would also ask her to move out for a while, but under no circumstances are you to leave the marital home. She could cite abandonment. OP responds, our first 2 kids are IVF, so they are mine. I broke down with her one night and asked if the third was mine. She nearly vomited at the suggestion, and the look on her face told me all I needed to know. Not that I seriously believe that she isn't, but the thought crossed my mind. I told her tonight that I'm going to reveal the EA to the OMSW, and she hit the roof, waterworks, etc., then told me to that either I trust what she is telling or we should separate. I'm thinking of asking her to do a poly. Any advice on how to approach this? Could that be the answer to my not fully trusting her? I am being quite irrational at the moment. 1 minute all over her, showering her with love, trying to move on. The next minute I'm sad and reclusive. This behavior leaves her not knowing where I'm at. To be honest, I don't know either. I feel it's jeopardizing any chance of a reconciliation. We have 3 kids and W is from the other side of the world. Part of me fears a separation will mean her returning to her home with the children. I'm getting my W to write a timeline of the EA and encourage her to leave nothing out. Obviously dates will be sketchy given the timeline, but the interactions won't be whatever they were. PA. Then I'm going to hit her with a poly to prove that timeline isn't more lies and half-truths, anything but full, frank and total honesty will be terminal for our marriage. Anyway, thanks to you all, I am now much more comfortable with whatever and however this turns out. I read the 180 and have implement my version of it. I call it the 135. I woke up this morning full of purpose because no matter what happens I am awesome and I'll be just fine with or without her. The more she's talked about it, the more I'm being swayed by fact my W's father died in her mid-teens, which totally rocked her world as he was her world. And she viewed OM as a sympathetic father figure. He is 12 to 15 years older, who listened intently and told her the nice things she wanted to hear, things a dad might say. Please comment on this as my bullcrap filter is clearly not functioning 100%. The email trail from both of my discoveries aligns with this. She has been at painful lengths to say there has been and never ever was any Pia to me. There is a possibility there was before we were married. She is convincing, but pathological liars aren't they? The bottom line is I gave my W a second chance when many wouldn't have, and she slammed that goodwill, trust, some say naivety, back into my face, then lied to my face to cover up detail. She responds with something like, I told him I wasn't interested in anything but being his friend. I told him I waited a long time for you to come into my life and I would never do anything to harm that. Sounds contradictory in the current context. He said he can accept it but just wants to keep in contact just to know how I'm doing. I haven't told the OMs was I haven't been bothered until now to research where the poor woman lives or even what her name is. I will follow up on this in due course. It's just not a high priority for me right now. While they may well have had slept together, I haven't seen any clues, hint to this end in any of their correspondence, not one suggestive comment or innuendo. Between the 2 times I've caught them, I've read quite a few pages of dialogue. I would have thought I'd have seen even hint if that were the case. This doesn't mean I'm convinced they didn't. She'd say things like, I'm so sorry I've hurt you. He was never really in my life. He was just a guy who fell in love with me, and yes, I know it's selfish. I can't believe what I've done to you in our marriage, all for a guy I just saw as a good friend. I've been so stupid. You are only man I love, always have and always will. I had the opportunity to be with him when he told me he loved me, but I said no, I don't love you, I love OP, and nothing will ever change that. I guess all I can do is apply the blowtorch and follow that with the poly and see what comes out of the woodwork. I have managed to at least find the OM's one Facebook. She looks lovely, and I know where she works and where they live. I will phone her at work, as phoning the home number may see OM answering the phone. I haven't been able to find email address. I'm hoping that she will collaborate with me and stealth into OM's email and get all correspondence, lock, stock, and barrel. Just to be clear, they met after we started living together but before we were married. Just to add some more context, when I first discovered the relationship, she said she would never have any contact with OM again, and I'm pretty sure she didn't until OM bumped into W's cousin. He asked W's cousin to ask W to contact him just to let him know she was okay. She obviously did that. At that point in time, she broke her no more contact promise, and the EA started up again, and they meet for lunch not long before we left the country. The time between these events was 3 years. Once we had moved countries, 18 months went by before any further contact. It was a few emails and a phone call. Then another year went by, then a few emails and a phone call. My W has had trouble settling into our new life as she is away from her family and was using him as sympathetic ear. To be fair, OM was saying that's like you owe it to yourself, your husband and family to accept where you are and to be happy, which is good advice from a friend, albeit an inappropriate one that shouldn't have been around to give said advice. I'm certain there has been no further contact between W and OM since I rediscovered the EA. 1. I'm an IT pro and have pretty much everything covered from email, even with deleted messages. 2. W and OM are not smart in IT. My wife isn't aware of recycle bin in her email, for example. 3. I control both the home phone and her mobile phone bills, so I have real-time data. 4. I have cloud backing up her phone daily so can see app chat data, even deleted messages. The time zones between where we live now and where OM lives is typically 12 hours, so it really would be difficult for them to talk. Previous phone call was carefully planned via email, so OM's W and me weren't about, and there is only a small window in the morning and at night that those phone calls are possible. We haven't been back to visit since we left, but are planning a trip later this year. Unfortunately, OM and W had planned to catch up for lunch during that trip. Not sure where I'm going with this, just giving more info. I'm also looking for some advice on how approach OM's W. It will be a phone call to her place of work. Then I'm going to say I have indisputable and undeniable email trail that proves your H and my W have been having, at best case, an EA on and off for the last 14 years, and I'm happy to send her that email trail. I want to convince her stay calm and not approach her H, but to work with me to find more correspondence. If she can get access to her high school email, she could possibly get 95% of it. This email trail will be harder for her to read than it has been for me, as her H has been persistently declaring undying love for my W, and my W has not once reciprocated feelings of love. I differentiate I love you and lots of love. I did say to W that I was going to inform OM's W, but haven't mentioned it since, and a lot of water has passed under the bridge since then, so I don't think it's even on her radar. Plus I said I'd need her help as I don't know where to start looking. Once I realized that I screwed up telling her that I take it underground, which is what I should have done in the first place. Secondly, W is extremely unlikely to have contacted OM about this or anything else. A month ago, she wrote him an email that I was a part of to OM outlining how much their correspondence had hurt me and jeopardized our and she would never be in touch again, and asked him to respect hers, our wishes. I am checking daily for any sign of comms and as expected nothing to date so highly improbable. I did screw up though. I sent OM an email the day after W's email outlining what I thought of him, a married man constantly declaring undying love for my W, and how would he think his family would feel reading the email trail. I did however say this as a question as opposed to a threat. The worst case here is he's gone and covered his tracks, deleted all emails from W, which wouldn't be great but not terminal as I still have the last 2 years worth safely storage in cloud. I certainly doubt he would have confessed to his wife based on my email as it was non-threatening, just my feelings. On a different note, while researching OMW, I did discover that OM and OMW were married early in 2015, just a few weeks before we moved countries, and close to time they meet for lunch, and as they have 2 adult children and W said he was already married but it wasn't a happy marriage, I'm guessing this was a vow renewal. I guess that proves he was either feeding my W lies about the state of his marriage or he's a complete trash, renewing his vows all the while actively declaring his love for my W at every opportunity. I've got a photo of OM and OMW on the day, from Facebook. They renewed their vows smiling away. I'm going to swipe that smile of his smug face. I was originally going to show my W the photo to show her the human face of the other victim, a real human, but I've pulled my head in as that would alert her to the fact that I'm actually going to contact OMW. See, I'm learning. I went to IC today and laid it down. I'm thinking about it more as mediation than I see at this point. I get my requirements down, he listens, and replays them to the W. I'm not there, so it's cordial and candid. I really challenged him on how he would go about getting me the confidence I need. She that W is telling the truth given her propensity for telling lies about the IA. He was a little stunned how forthright about this I was. I asked him if he'd ever used a polygraph as part of the process. He had. I gave him my unprofessional opinion. I just can't see how we're going to satisfy me sufficiently without the aid of technology. When he talked about our MC session booked for tomorrow, I told him sternly there is no MC at this point in time. He agreed, and tomorrow's session is W only. Would love to be a fly on the wall, as I hope he's not going sugarcoat what I laid down. I'll be making the call to OMW Tuesday US time. I'm in no way nervous about this. I've made much harder calls in my life. I was adopted and found my birth mother when I was 40 after a period of time. She told me my father's name. He wasn't 100% aware of my existence. I researched and found him online and just picked up the phone and called, after 5 beers for courage. This will be a walk in the park compared to that. I can only see upside. 1. OMW gets to hear what a pig of a husband she married to for 20 has been plus years. 2. OM gets to learn the consequences of infidelity, and if he does truly love my what he has professed consistently all this time, it will give him the opportunity to finally set himself free from an unhappy marriage and may one day be truly happy, just not with my W. 3. OMW may be able to help fill in gaps I've missed in the email trail, which will, or not, ratify W's story about when and how contact resumed after our first NC agreement. This will add to my process of starting to trust her again, or not. Either way, it will add to it. Hope that doesn't make me a bad person, but I do have a small sense of revenge towards OM. He started this most unpleasant journey. As they say, revenge is a dish best served cold. Thanks to all of you who have actively encouraged me to think about the other victim of this IA and to show her the respect, decency, and dignity she deserves. Unless they have some kind of open marriage. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice deceiving. I intend to be nothing but gentle and firm. With OMW, she may be about to have the world she thought she lived in turned upside down. If I can't be sympathetic to that given my current state of affairs, then I'd not be the man I think I am. I dropped the poly on W this morning and it got the desired reaction and reply. I am calling OMW tonight, so looking forward to that. I'm starting to see what I think is true remorse from WM, and also now getting clarity on the W's defects that allowed this mess to eventuate, and also mine. I'm sharing these with her, I see, in a well-thought-out, constructive manner, and W is also seeing and acknowledging them, which I see as positive. I'm not ready to R yet, but I'm seeing a path that I and no one else is driving that may just get there. Well, my lead on OMW turned cold. Back to the drawing board. She has a Facebook account but aren't sure OM isn't going to see any private message and shut it down. Any suggestions on angles I can work? I know their home phone number, but I see that as risky. He's semi-retired and likely to be at home. I need her to be somewhere that she can compose herself after the news to focus her on the job at hand without OM catch on. Update. I'm now comfortable that no PIA took place. I didn't do the poly, although W agreed to it. All the love talk was one way and W accepts that this was totally unacceptable and reprehensible. She is working really hard to restore my trust and is having IC. She has a gullibility about her, and although she knows it was wrong, she didn't want to hurt anyone but ended up hurting the person she loves most. OM was playing the broken marriage card to play on her good nature. She knows this now and is devastated at how naive she's been. I'm all good, operating at my own pace, and will look at MC when and if the time is right. I've sent OMW a message via Facebook Messenger. Not my preferred option by a long shot, but when you've exhausted all options, you're left with what you have. I started with a brief, then put in 6 snippets of his emails to my W. I suggested she haul his sorry ass for a poly so we can compare notes. It's not going to make pleasant reading for her. OMW's last activity on Facebook was 18 months ago. If she doesn't respond, should I send a similar message to OM and OMW adult children? They are both active Facebook users. The children's passports are locked away. Mom and dad are no longer walking the earth. She's not going anywhere anytime soon. Right, just got off a 90 minutes call with OMW. She hangs up on me twice but hung in there. She's on board fully and is playing detective from her end. All will be clear very soon. I was calm and pointed. She was calm, but I warned her she was about to have a total meltdown. This is going to get very real, really quickly. She's a feisty woman with a bee in her bonnet. A woman scorned and all that crap is about to hit the fan. Duck. It was harder than I thought. She was totally in the dark. I feel liberated, thanks to all those who just wouldn't leave it alone. You know who you are. I can sleep easy for the first time in ages. A problem shared is a problem halved. I was thinking the other way around. I know there is no way we would or could contact OM without me knowing. I can slip in that OMW is on the lookout her end to add to the risk. If I tell her and exaggerate that I told OMW last week, the Sean TS hit the fan and he's taking a poly tomorrow and I'll have the results very soon. She'll be cool out, she'll freak as in a reverse parking lot confession. Her reaction will tell me everything. If she risks contacting OM knowing there are tripwires both ends, then I'll also know. If she believes he's taking a poly, which he will most likely be doing anyway, then there is no point contracting him. If she is lying about no PA, she'll know she's trapped either way whether she contacts him or not. Feel free to slap me, I've got adrenaline coursing through my veins and see this as a shortcut. My gut says she's telling the truth about no PA. This will prove poor, disprove gut no. No DNA test as yet, that's not to say I've brushed it. I brushed it last time so consequences weren't clear. I'm not excusing, but it's the reality. That won't happen again. Weeks later, I told W about the contact I made with OMW and that he'd be having a poly and I'd get the result, emphasizing that any PA would come out through this. We didn't flinch at all and I was watching her very closely. She reiterated her conviction that there was never any intimacy and that she was never physically attracted to OM and he was like a father figure to her, one that she openly admits was wrong because of his feelings towards her. She just didn't see the harm. She knows the harm it's caused me in our marriage and is sickened by it. We had MC this week and it was a real wake-up call for her hearing how this has affected me. I have been very blunt about what I need to see in order to consider moving toward R. I guess we'll see in the next weeks if her actions match her words. I'm in good shape. I'm controlling this thing, bossing it and running it my way at my pace to my schedule. I still need to see plenty more remorse and action from W, but the signs are good. Half a year later, after exposing the E to OMW and sending her some of the message OM has sent to W, things blew up big time. OM contacted me to ask me to stop contact with OMW. I agreed on the condition that he gave me a timeline with details that matched W's timeline, etc. I probed and poked until they had nothing more to give each without knowing I was probing the other. Neither of them knows till this day the full extent of my checking and cross-checking. My only reservation was a pre-hatched story between W and OMW, but like I've said before, I'm technology professional and W and OMW are not, so I know 100% there was absolutely no contact from well before D-Day 2. Things matched up to my satisfaction. I put the blowtorch on both parties, especially W, and the narratives check out. It may sound cliched and not something those on here take lightly, but by the time I had finished, W would have to be one of the layers on the planet if what she was saying wasn't true. I know cheater are great liars. This was an E, pure and simple, and although W had trouble accepting this as an affair, as she was never attracted to OM in any way whatsoever and has never thought of him as anything but a friend, she has accepted responsibility and has been working very hard to put things right. She accepts that taking emotional comfort and flattery from anyone but me isn't acceptable in a marriage, and any consequent behavior would end in instant D. I'm happy to say we're still together and things are good. Very good, in fact. I still get pangs of hurt and get a bit down from time to time thinking about the deception, but I'm okay. W recognizes this and ups her effort when she sees this. We wouldn't be together today if this was a PA. I just wouldn't tolerate that. My situation doesn't seem to be the normal outcome here compared to others, and comments on this forum are pointed and based on experience. However, EA plus proximity doesn't always equal PA. Call it an EA or an inappropriate relationship. I couldn't give a crap. The fact is, this inappropriate relationship has caused a great deal of damage to both me and OMW. I know OMW has been ill since I blew this thing up, stress-related no doubt. We never had any physical or romantic involvement with OM, at least from her perspective. But at the end of the day, she betrayed my trust. She was disloyal not once but twice, and her selfishness has sentenced me an internal stress that isn't very pleasant to live with. It's been a time where I'm constantly reassessing if the reward is worth the pain. An option appraisal, if you will. 2 to 4 years seems to be generally acceptable time frame to heal from a betrayal. Well, what if you get through it? You're no better off. All pain, no gain, and a waste of time that could be used to move on to a life more fulfilling. My head is saying just get over it, man, but my gut seems to be deaf to what my head is saying. It's not that I don't think I know the full story, it's a deep-seated feeling that the woman I thought I married wouldn't have done this. My comment, constant lies and deception for 15 years, is impossible to overlook. The fact that she promised to stop all contact, then intentionally met with him for lunch, called him on the phone, and maintained email contact with him shows total disrespect for you. Can you trust her to be a safe partner and consider you above her own need to feel validated by other men? Story 2. After 14 months of going dark, my walk-away wife told me last Thursday that she wants to get back together. There is tragedy here, but I know how desperately some of you need a glimmer of hope to hold on to, and there is a story of hope as well. My wa told me she was unhappy and wanted to leave in August of 2017, several days before our 22nd anniversary. I was devastated. She moved out. Read everything I could to get her back. Been going to IC ever since. Wrote one apology note in a way that was suggested in one of the books I read. Eventually went dark. Very little contact and 180. No infidelity, no kids, by choice, just two people that were unable to communicate or understand that our marriage needed work. Those of you with infidelity in the mix, I am not sure how negatively it will impact your feelings towards this story. Since she left, we have probably not had more than 15 to 20 encounters. At the beginning, my actions were calculated and infrequent with the hope of giving her space but sending some indication that I still cared. Like refinished a rocking chair that she wanted to give to a friend having first baby, invited her to the service that I joined my church. We never spoke about the goals of our separation, and one afternoon soon after she moved out, I asked to see her, gave her a copy of Divorce Busting, and told her to call me if she decided to read it and find out if our marriage could be better than she ever thought it could be. I also said that if I was not the man to make her happy, she should see other people. This last statement ending up being a mistake on my part, but not for the reasons you might think. Two people begin to live their lives separately. Jump to October 2018. Last wed, I get a "how are you" email out of the blue. After an all-business response, I confirm that I will be filing papers in December for a Jan 2019 divorce. Another email, I need to talk. We meet Thursday night, and it comes out in the conversation that she fell in love with me 25 years ago, has always loved me, wants to grow old together, does not want our marriage to end without knowing we tried to make it work. There is very little financial incentive for her to reconcile or divorce. It's a not issue. More of the story will come out, which might temper everyone's enthusiasm. But I want you all to know, the working on myself has brought me to the brink of reconciliation. The timing of events has really created what will probably be a tragic outcome for my marriage. The same day I told my wife she should see other people, I met my GF. We have had a great year together, and my decision to pursue her was an acknowledgement that I felt my marriage was over and dead. My walk-away wife has also had a relationship in the last 14 months, but when she felt she needed to work on our marriage, she told her new man she needed time and broke it off. In contrast, I told my GF about the WA encounter, revelation, and told my GF that I told my WA that reconciliation was probably not an option at this time because I was in love with someone else. After extensive conversations with my counselor, pastor, friends, and family, I am probably going to have to tell my WA that we cannot try to save our marriage at this time, but I cannot predict what will happen in the future. Here are some of the reasons for my decision. 1. Sadly, I do not have a physical attraction to my WA these days. 2. I feel I will resent my WA for having to hurt my GF to reconcile. 3. There are parts of my marriage I do not miss, mostly around family interactions. 4. While I feel I am breaking my marriage promise, I do not think a reconcile would be successful due to the items above. This has been a heartbreaking experience, as I do not want my WA to suffer the crippling pain I felt 14 months ago. Kind of anticlimactic and not much help for you, but my GF is also still married. She had been separated from her STBX for 9 months when we met. My GF has started to press for me to continue to get my divorce while she delays for financial reason. An unfortunate double standard that may play a significant role in our relationship over the next several months. On a real nuts and bolts level, I have a tax-driven reason to stay married as long as I can, but I will complete my D in early 2019. A year later, this morning I broke off my nearly 2-year relationship after an evening of intimacy and passion. When push comes to shove, there are several things I am going to be confident about. I broke it off in person. I did at a time when she does not have to see me remove my stuff. She is spending the weekend with her family for support, and I made the right choice based on her laying blame on me instead of owning any of the challenges in our relationship. I am struggling with if there is ever a good time to say goodbye, and she seemed to be angrier about it than sad. Just had to get this off my chest. There is no doubt that there is a level of cruelty in my choice of sequencing the events. I own that, and for sure I expected it to be an issue in the conversation. Unfortunately, there was no rational opportunity to discuss the reasons for me breaking it off. The underlying issue, which stems from her having kids and grandkids, and me being too low of a priority, secondary at times I felt, to even checking Facebook. I am not a Facebook guy, not even an account, rather than quality affection and conversation was never going to be something she would even acknowledge. While the hurt was predictably the first emotion and anger the tone of the short interaction, I was disappointed that all of our time together, which in general I thought was magical, was seen through the lens of 12 hours. I cannot go back, but in retrospect, I am not sure any time would have been less painful. I deserve all the criticism, actually want it. I am not looking for approval or forgiveness, I have to answer to the man in the mirror. Clearly there is a significant amount of shame here for hurting a dear woman that I care for deeply, but know that we would not overcome our challenges. What is the appropriate time to wait after making love before saying goodbye? Does the length of time change if you still love that person as much as you ever have but your love for one another cannot overcome your challenges? How about if the goodbye was timed so that your partner could take advantage of a long family weekend for emotional support? My comment, personally, I would like the person to tell me, in a nice way, they've enjoyed the time we've spent together but don't see a future. Then, present me with option of being intimate one last time if I was interested. I would see that as a pleasurable closure to the relationship. Doing it after the bonding just seems so harsh and would have me feeling used.